Chapter 1: Shots, Strangers, and a Vow. If there's one thing I've learned in life, it's that Vegas is like a malfunctioning vending machine. You put in your dollar, expecting a harmless soda, and instead it spits out a live rattlesnake and a signed copy of your death certificate. Tonight, I got something worse. A husband. Let me rewind. It all started at my sister's joint bachelor/bachelorette party. Her fiancé's friends were there, my friends were there, and about 12 strangers we picked up along the way who either didn't know whose party this was or just didn't care. I was 3 tequila shots past flirty, and somewhere in the neighborhood of, let's do something illegal but cute. That's when I met him. Tall, sharp suit. The kind of guy who looks like he alphabetizes his socks. He was standing at the bar like it had personally offended him. I slid onto the stool next to him. Hey suit, you here for the party? Or are you just judging us for sport? He glanced over, eyebrows arched like I just asked him for his social security number. I'm here for my brother's bachelor party. I assume you're part of the noise pollution from the bachelorette side. I grinned. Jack Bennett, maid of honor's brother. He didn't even crack a smile. Ethan Collins. Cool, Ethan. I signaled the bartender. 2 shots. Top shelf. This man needs tequila like I need therapy. 2 shots turned into 4. 4 turned into us screaming along to bad karaoke with a group of Swedish tourists who might have been professional wrestlers in disguise. I don't remember exactly when I decided Ethan was actually fun. Possibly around the moment he pulled off his tie and used it as a headband. Somewhere between living on a prayer and a mutual rant about overpriced hotel water, we stumbled into one of those tacky 24-hour wedding chapels. I dare you, I slurred, pointing at the neon sign that read love is forever, or until annulment. I don't take dares, he said. You do tonight. Come on, be spontaneous. It's Vegas. It's a law or something, I said, grabbing his hand. Next thing I knew, we were standing in front of a man dressed like Elvis, holding plastic rings and swaying slightly. Do you, Ethan Collins, take Jack Bennett to be your lawfully wedded husband? Elvis asked, clearly over this part of his shift. Ethan looked at me. His eyes were glassy from alcohol, but there was a hint of challenge there. Sure, he said. Do you, Jack Bennett, take Ethan Collins? Yes, I blurted. Because I've never backed down from anything in my life, including bad decisions. We kissed. Not a passionate kiss. Not even a romantic kiss. More like a you didn't think I'd go through with it, did you kiss? And that was it. Married. Post-vows hotel chaos. We somehow made it back to my hotel room without being arrested, mugged, or adopted by a street magician, which in Vegas is a miracle. The first thing Ethan did was pull the minibar door open. This is all wildly overpriced, he muttered, grabbing a tiny bottle of champagne anyway. I kicked my shoes off, flopped onto the bed, and pointed at the gaudy, just married bag we'd been given at the chapel. Open that. See what kind of domestic treasures we got. He pulled out a pair of plastic champagne flutes, 2 vouchers for a free breakfast buffet, and a suspiciously sticky deck of cards. This is tragic, he said, sitting on the bed beside me. I snorted. You're tragic. Drink your overpriced bubbly, husband. We sat there, clinking plastic glasses, watching bad infomercials with the sound turned off. Somewhere between our second and third tiny bottle, I decided Ethan had a nice laugh. Warm. A little surprised, like he didn't use it often. Do you regret it? I asked, leaning back on my elbows. I'm too drunk to regret anything right now. Ask me in the morning, he said. Deal. But if I make coffee, you're on breakfast duty. I grinned. He gave me a look. I don't cook. Guess I'll be the hot one in this marriage, then, I said, stretching out. That earned me an eye roll so sharp it could cut glass. We fell asleep like that. Me sprawled diagonally across the bed. Him sitting upright against the headboard. One arm draped over the back of my shoulders like it didn't mean anything. It meant nothing. Obviously. Chapter 2. Wait, you're who? If waking up married is bad, waking up married and hungover is worse. Like bad internet connection worse. The sunlight in the hotel room was aggressive. Like it had been weaponized. I groaned. Shoved my face into the pillow, and tried to remember why the bed smelled faintly like champagne and bad decisions. Then someone cleared their throat. I froze. Slowly, I lifted my head and turned it just enough to see Ethan Collins, my brand new husband, apparently, sitting on the edge of the bed, fully dressed in yesterday's suit, scrolling on his phone like we were just two strangers on a plane. "Morning," I croaked. "Technically, it's almost noon and we have a problem," he said without looking at me. I sat up, wincing. "Aside from the fact that I think my brain is leaking out of my ears?" He put his phone down and turned to face me, his expression like someone about to fire an employee. "You're Jack Bennett, correct?" "Last I checked, yeah." "Bride's brother?" Yeah." He folded his hands. "I'm the groom's brother." It took a second for that to sink in. Then I squinted at him. Wait. You mean to tell me?" "Yes, our siblings are marrying each other. And apparently we also married," he said. "Oh, crap. Okay, well, this is fine. We'll just quietly get an annulment before anyone finds out. And no one ever has to know I accidentally married the human embodiment of a cold front." I rubbed my face. Ethan ignored the insult. "There's a slight complication. The wedding party is meeting for brunch. In 30 minutes. Brunch from hell." We made it to the restaurant with minimal conversation. Mostly because I was busy trying not to throw up in Ethan's very expensive car. The moment we walked in, my sister waved. She was glowing. The bride glow, which made me feel both proud and extremely guilty. "Jack," she called. "You made it. And you brought—" She hesitated. Ethan? Hello?" Ethan said smoothly, sliding into a seat like he hadn't just married her brother 12 hours ago. I sat across from him and tried to look casual, which lasted exactly 40 seconds before I accidentally kicked him under the table. He didn't flinch, just murmured, "Try that again and I'll tell them." I smiled at the table, just stretching my legs. The groom, Ethan's brother, grinned at us. "So, you two met last night, huh?" "Oh, we met real good," I said, stabbing my pancake. Ethan's eyes flicked to mine, full of silent murder. After brunch, we slipped out into the hotel hallway like two spies escaping a failed mission. That was dangerously close to exposure. Ethan said, "You're welcome. I'm an excellent actor. I deserve an Oscar for not calling you honey in front of your brother." I said, "Don't," he warned. I smirked. "What, you don't like pet names, hubby?" He stopped walking. "We're getting this annulled immediately." "Fine," I said, hands up in mock surrender. "But until then, you're stuck with me." And I snore. He muttered something that sounded like, "Of course you do." Chapter 3, Ground Rules and Broken Rules. Ethan and I could have gone our separate ways after brunch. He could have gone to his very boring, very quiet, very Ethan-like hotel room. I could have gone back to mine, eaten questionable room service, and watched reality TV until my hangover passed. But no. Apparently my hotel room had been accidentally given to a group of Norwegian Elvis impersonators for a convention, Vegas, man. And guess who offered, by which I mean grudgingly tolerated, to let me crash in his suite? Ethan Collins. My brother-in-law's brother. My husband. I swear I heard the universe cackling. The suite. Ethan's hotel suite was the opposite of mine. Mine had neon carpet, a view of the parking lot, and curtains that smelled like regret. His, crisp white sheets, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the Strip, and a minibar that looked like it had been curated by a wine snob with a PhD. I whistled. "Nice digs, Collins. How much did you bribe the hotel for this?" "Family discount," he said, unlocking the door like he owned the place. "Don't touch anything." I immediately dropped onto the pristine couch. "So, ground rules." "Yes," he said, setting his suitcase on the desk like he was in a spy movie. 1. Stay out of my way. 2. Do not touch my things. 3. No unnecessary conversation. I grinned. Cool. My ground rules. 1. I'm touching everything. 2. I get the good pillows. 3. You're making me coffee in the morning. He gave me the kind of look that could turn milk sour. "You're impossible." "Thank you," I said. We lasted about 7 minutes before the first rule was broken. I was just looking in his minibar, trying to see if the little jars of mixed nuts were worth $10. Spoiler, they're not. When Ethan appeared like a very annoyed shadow. "What did I just say?" he asked. "You said don't touch your things. This isn't yours, it's the hotel's," I said, holding up a jar. "Put it back." "Make me." The jar disappeared from my hand in one swift motion. Honestly, I was a little impressed. Later, while Ethan was on the phone with someone about urgent business, translation, probably Googling how to annul a marriage without paperwork, I decided to claim the bigger bed. When he came back and saw me starfished across it, he stopped in the doorway. "No. Yes, it's the only way this will work. You take the couch, I take the bed, we both live together," I said, not moving. "It's my suite," he said. "It's our suite, community property, hubby," I corrected, patting the mattress. He muttered something under his breath, grabbed a pillow, and stalked to the couch. That night, we ended up watching a terrible action movie together because the remote batteries died halfway through changing channels, and neither of us wanted to get up. At one point, Ethan actually laughed at one of my comments. Not a big laugh. More like a tiny smirk that looked like it had escaped without his permission. I didn't point it out because I wanted to keep it. We didn't talk about the wedding, or the annulment, or our siblings' upcoming marriage. For one night, we were just two idiots in a hotel suite, pretending this wasn't the weirdest situation of our lives. Of course, the truce wouldn't last. It never does. Chapter 4. Errands, espresso, and almost arrested. I woke up alone, which would have been alarming if I hadn't remembered. Oh right, my husband doesn't actually like me. The bed was cold on Ethan's side. Okay. Technically it wasn't his side, but I decided it was, and the faint sound of tapping keys came from the other room. I stumbled into the suite's living area to find Ethan at the desk, wearing a crisp shirt, tie perfectly knotted, hair annoyingly perfect. And it wasn't even 8 a.m. "Why are you like this?" I mumbled, rubbing my eyes. "Like what?" he said without looking up. "Productive. Awake. Groomed. It's unsettling. Normal people ease into the morning with coffee and mild resentment. Not whatever this is." I shuffled toward the minibar. He glanced at me. "Speaking of coffee, we have to leave in 20 minutes. I froze mid-reach for a tiny bottle of overpriced orange juice. Leave? For what? I had big plans for today. Namely, nothing. Our siblings asked us to pick up the custom wedding favors from a shop across town, he said. I blinked. "You mean they asked you? And you, in a moment of terrible judgment, are dragging me along? You're part of the wedding party, you have responsibilities," he said. I sighed. "Fine. But I'm not wearing pants that don't have elastic." Vegas traffic at 8:30 a.m. is exactly as bad as you'd think. A mix of exhausted tourists, impatient locals, and at least one guy dressed as Spider-Man riding a scooter down the wrong lane. We stopped at a coffee shop because Ethan claimed he couldn't deal with me uncaffeinated. I took that as both an insult and a compliment. The barista smiled at us. "What can I get you guys?" "Black coffee," Ethan said immediately. I leaned on the counter. "Do you have anything with at least 6 different kinds of sugar in it? Maybe glitter?" Ethan sighed like he was reconsidering the annulment just so he could never have to order with me again. When our drinks came, I handed him his cup. "Here, husband." "Don't," he said, taking it. The wedding favor shop was tiny, tucked between a pawn shop and a store selling questionable t-shirts. A bell jingled as we walked in, and an elderly woman behind the counter looked up. "Ah, the Collins Bennett order, one moment," she said. While she disappeared into the back, I wandered around the shop, picking up various items. "Ethan, look, they have keychains shaped like tiny toilets. We should have done these for the wedding favors." He didn't even look at me. "Please don't touch anything." I grinned and touched everything. When the woman returned, she placed a large box on the counter. "Be careful with these, they're fragile." Ethan nodded, taking the box like it was made of nitroglycerin. We made it halfway to the car before I tripped on absolutely nothing. Don't judge me. The sidewalk was uneven, I grabbed Ethan's arm to steady myself, which wouldn't have been a big deal except the box tipped. We froze as the top slid open and a row of delicate glass ornaments rolled toward the edge. "Jack, if you drop these," Ethan said, voice dangerously calm. "Relax. See? No harm done." I lunged, catching them with reflexes that honestly impressed me. He took the box back, muttering something about statistical inevitability and reckless chaos. When we delivered the favors to my sister's suite, she smiled. "Wow, you two actually work together. No fighting." I grinned. "Of course not. We're a great team." Ethan's mouth twitched like he was holding back an entire paragraph of rebuttal. As we left, I leaned toward him. "See? We can totally survive until the annulment." He didn't answer, which I took as agreement. Obviously. Chapter 5. Cake, Catastrophe, and Questionable Choices. I had exactly 2 rules for life in Vegas. Avoid anything that involves public humiliation. Never volunteer for extra work. So obviously I broke both. It started when my sister cornered me in the hotel lobby. She had the look. You know, the one brides get when they're about to ask you to help, but what they actually mean is sacrifice your time and sanity. "Jack," she said sweetly, "could you and Ethan do me a tiny favor?" I was already shaking my head. "Nope. Busy. Plans." "What plans?" Watching TV. And eating." She didn't even blink. "We need someone to go to the bakery and finalize the cake flavors. The delivery guy called in sick, and the tasting samples are ready right now." Before I could argue, she added, "The bakery closes in an hour." I was about to fake a sudden illness when Ethan appeared behind me like a smug shadow. "We'll do it," he said. I spun around. "What? No, we won't." "We will, it's one errand." "How hard could it be?" he said. Famous last words. The bakery smelled like heaven and sugar and the faint regret of people who ate too many cupcakes. The woman behind the counter smiled. "You must be here for the Collins Bennett tasting tray." I grinned. "That's us. And just to clarify, do we have to pick just one flavor? Or can we get like all of them?" Ethan sighed. "One flavor. That's the point." She returned with a tray that looked like it belonged in a dessert museum. Neat little slices of cake in every color and flavor imaginable. Chocolate, vanilla, red velvet, lemon, carrot, some kind of raspberry thing that smelled illegal. I stabbed my fork into the chocolate slice first. "Okay, this one wins." "Done." "You can't just pick the first thing you taste," Ethan said, methodically cutting a perfect bite of vanilla. "Sure I can. It's called decisive leadership," I said through a mouthful of chocolate. He ignored me and took notes, actual notes, in a small notebook he apparently carries everywhere. I stared at him. "Are you rating the cakes?" "Yes." "On what scale? Moistness? Emotional impact?" He didn't answer. By slice number 4, we were in a full-blown cake war. "Red velvet is just chocolate cake pretending to be special," Ethan said. "That's slander, you take that back." I shot back. "It's not even good chocolate." I gasped. "You are a monster." We went back and forth for 10 minutes until the bakery lady cleared her throat. "Gentlemen, you know you could do a layered cake, right?" We froze. "Layered?" I repeated. "Yes, multiple flavors." "Problem solved," she said. We left the bakery with a finalized order for a 3-layer cake, a sugar high, and, somehow, a small box of extra slices for the road. In the parking lot, I handed Ethan a container. "You know, we make a pretty good team when we're not trying to kill each other." He took the cake without looking at me. "Don't get used to it." "But I swear." "Swear." I saw the tiniest smile before he turned away. Chapter 6. Lace, Lies, and Life Choices. I should have known something was wrong when my sister texted, "Bring Ethan. Urgent." When a bride says urgent, it's never about actual emergencies like fires or aliens. It's about her dress. We arrived at the bridal boutique to find my sister standing on a pedestal in a half-zipped gown, looking like she was about 2 seconds from throwing a veil at someone's head. "There you are, I need opinions," she said, glaring at me like I was late to my own execution. I looked around. Where's the maid of honor? Isn't this her job? She's stuck in traffic and you're here. So, opinions. My sister said, gestured dramatically at herself. I groaned. Fine. You look white. Ethan, of course, stepped in with, the bodice fits well, but the skirt is too heavy for the train length. I blinked at him. How do you know that? I've been to weddings before, Jack, he said. We somehow got roped into helping in the fitting room, which meant Ethan zipped and unzipped dresses while I tried to keep the bridesmaids from spilling champagne on the samples. At one point, a saleswoman handed Ethan a delicate lace veil. Can you hold this for a moment? He did, looking about as comfortable as a cat in a bathtub. I grinned. Wow, you're a natural. Maybe we should renew our vows, veil included. Jack, he said warningly. What? You'd look great in tulle. The trouble started when a particularly poofy ball gown refused to come off. My sister was trapped inside, arms flailing like a fabric-covered octopus. Ethan, help me, she yelled. He was already on it, working the zipper with surgeon-like precision. I was less helpful. This is how horror movies start. Death by wedding dress, I said. Jack, grab the hem, Ethan barked. Right? I crouched, yanked, and the entire skirt popped off in one violent thwomp, sending me sprawling backward into a rack of veils. The boutique went silent for 2 beats before the bridesmaids burst out laughing. The quiet moment. Later, when the chaos died down, Ethan and I were standing off to the side while my sister twirled in the chosen dress. You actually did great in there, I said. You nearly destroyed $2,000 worth of tulle, he replied. Yeah, but I did it with style. He gave me a side glance, one of those almost smiles he pretends isn't a smile. You're impossible. Thank you, I said. Chapter 7, 2 left feet and 1 unwanted crush. If there's one thing I've learned in life, it's this. Nothing good ever starts with the words, the dance instructor just canceled, but you two can fill in. Yet there I was, standing in a mirrored dance studio with Ethan, while my sister and his brother looked at us like we were their new entertainment. Jack, you and Ethan can run through the first dance with me, my sister said, beaming like she wasn't ruining my life. I pointed at myself. You want me to rehearse a wedding dance? With him? Yes, because you're both here, you're both coordinated enough, she said sweetly. I object, I interrupted. Ethan crossed his arms. You can't object. It's not a trial. It feels like one. But in the end, resistance was futile. 5 minutes later, the instructor had bailed. My sister had run off for a quick call. And it was just me and Ethan, alone with soft music playing and way too many mirrors watching my humiliation. Ethan held out his hand. Come on. I stared at it. Do I look like a Disney princess to you? Jack. With great suffering, I put my hand in his. His palm was warm. Too warm. Distractingly warm. We stepped into the first position, and I immediately trod on his foot. Sorry, I said. You're doing it on purpose. I'm not. My feet just have a mind of their own. Then tell them to get in line. Somewhere around attempt number 6, we managed a few full turns without injury. Ethan's hand settled at my waist, guiding me through the steps like he actually knew what he was doing. You're not terrible when you focus, he said. I smirked. Careful. That almost sounded like a compliment. It wasn't. But then he looked down at me. Steady, calm, the tiniest quirk at the corner of his mouth. And for a second, I forgot I was supposed to be annoyed at him. Of course, the moment couldn't last. On the next spin, my sock caught on the polished floor. Whoa! I pitched forward, and Ethan caught me by the back of my shirt, hauling me upright. Graceful, he said. I was testing your reflexes, you passed. Congratulations, husband, I said, straightening my shirt. By the time my sister came back, we were, shockingly, moving in sync. Oh wow, you guys look amazing together, she said, clapping. I immediately stepped away. We're done here. Ethan didn't say anything. But as we left, I caught him humming the song under his breath. And I maybe was still thinking about the feel of his hand at my waist hours later. Chapter 8. Shots, songs, and stupid feelings. Bachelor parties are supposed to be a safe space for chaos and bad decisions. They are not supposed to involve my accidental husband sitting across from me at a glitter-covered table, looking like he's plotting my murder between sips of beer. The whole combined party idea came from my sister. It'll be fun. Everyone together. Translation: you will suffer. The venue was some kind of hybrid karaoke bar and arcade. Dim lighting, sticky floors, and a suspicious smell of tequila and burnt popcorn. I slid into a booth next to Ethan because the only other option was sitting next to my future brother-in-law's creepy college friend who kept calling me Champ. "You look thrilled," I said to Ethan. "I was told there would be food," he said. "There is food." I gestured to a basket of fries. "See? Cuisine." The drinking game. It started innocently enough. Someone shouted, "Truth or drink?" And suddenly, I had a shot glass in my hand. First question: "What's the most embarrassing thing you've done in public?" I grinned. "Oh, I once." Ethan cut in. "He married me." The whole table exploded in laughter. I rolled my eyes. "You're hilarious." He raised his glass in mock salute. "I try." About an hour in, someone shoved a microphone into my hand and dragged me on stage. "I can't sing," I said. "That's the point," my sister yelled from the crowd. Ethan somehow ended up beside me, holding the second mic like this was a hostage situation. The music started, some cheesy 80s ballad, and we both mumbled through the first verse, glaring at each other instead of the lyrics. By the chorus, I gave up and started dramatically serenading him just to annoy him. And here's the worst part, he actually played along. Spun me around. Dipped me. The crowd went nuts. Later, after way too many shots, we ended up outside on the balcony, away from the noise. "You're not terrible when you're drunk," Ethan said, leaning on the railing. I smirked. "That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. It's also the only nice thing I'll probably ever say to you." We stood there for a minute, the neon lights painting his face pink and blue. I hated that my brain decided to notice how stupidly good he looked like that. Chapter 9. How to smile while someone is plotting your murder. The thing about wedding pre-shoots is that they're sold to you as a fun way to capture memories, when in reality they're 2 hours of pretending to enjoy the slow death of your back muscles. Ethan and I had barely arrived before the photographer started barking orders like a drill sergeant. "Groomsmen, over here. Bridesmaids, there. Yes, closer. No, closer. Pretend you like each other." Which is how I ended up arm in arm with Chloe, one of the bridesmaids. She was lovely, sweet, friendly, and clearly on her 5th cup of coffee. "Hijack, I'm supposed to hang on your arm like we're engaged. Is that okay?" "Sure," I said, wrapping an arm around her waist. She smiled. I could feel Ethan staring at me from across the lawn. Not a casual look. Not even a mild glare. This was the "if I were a cat your new girlfriend would have a broken vase over her head" kind of look. "Jack, little smile," the photographer shouted. I smiled. Chloe leaned in for the shot. Ethan's jaw visibly tightened. Oh, this was going to be fun. The photographer decided we needed fake couple shots of each bridesmaid with a groomsman, which meant Chloe and I were up first. "Now look at each other like you're in love," the photographer said. I turned to Chloe, who giggled. "Should I swoon?" "Please do," I said. She pretended to faint into my arms. Ethan made a noise, a sharp, low exhale, that I definitely wasn't supposed to hear from this distance. Once the couples were done, it was group photo time. Everyone bunched together, bridesmaids in pastel dresses, groomsmen in matching suits, all of us smiling like we weren't slowly dying inside. Ethan ended up on my other side for the big group shot. "You looked like you were enjoying yourself," he murmured without looking at me. "Maybe I was," I said, "because I'm apparently suicidal." His hand brushed the small of my back. Innocent enough for the camera, but firm enough for me to know it wasn't just for the photo. When it was Ethan's turn to pose with his assigned bridesmaid, a tall brunette named Amanda, I may or may not have leaned in the background to photobomb every single shot. At one point I even yelled, "Ethan, you're not holding her tight enough." He shot me a look that said, "I will deal with you later." I smiled sweetly back. By the time the photographer declared we were done, Ethan had maintained that calm, polite mask of his, but the second we were out of earshot, he leaned in close. "Enjoyed yourself?" he asked. "Immensely." His smile was slow and a little dangerous. "Good, because now it's my turn." I held up my hands. "Look, I don't know what kind of turn you're talking about, but if it involves me wearing a pastel bridesmaid dress, I'm out." That earned me the faintest smile before he crossed the room toward me. "Okay, for now, I'll forget about today. Consider yourself lucky," he said. I don't know why, but he sounded like a serial killer. Guess I escaped my death today. Chapter 10. One room, one bed, and one very bad idea. If the universe wanted to punish me, it could have just sent bad weather or a flat tire. But no, it decided to put me and Ethan in the same hotel room for the entire wedding weekend. We walked up to the reception desk, each dragging our own suitcase and our mutual loathing. "Reservation for Lawson," Ethan told the clerk. She typed for about 3 seconds before looking apologetic. "Oh, it looks like we have you two in the same room. Queen bed." I blinked. "I think you mean 2 rooms. Twin beds. Entirely separate oxygen zones." She shook her head. "I'm so sorry, sir. We're fully booked for the wedding. Unless one of you wants to sleep in the lobby." Ethan glanced at me. "Fine. 1 room's fine." "It's not fine," I said immediately. "It's a bed, Jack. We're adults." "Exactly. Adults who should have their own beds." He smirked. "Scared you'll accidentally cuddle me?" The room was cozy, which is code for tiny. Queen bed in the middle, 1 armchair in the corner, and about 2 feet of floor space on each side. I tossed my bag onto the chair. "I'll sleep there." "You're not sleeping in a chair all weekend, besides you're shorter. You take the inside," Ethan said, pulling off his jacket and tossing it onto the bed. "I am not shorter. I'm fun-sized." He just gave me that maddening half-smile and started unpacking. By the time we came back from the rehearsal dinner, I was half asleep and half annoyed. Ethan was already in bed, reading on his phone. He looked relaxed, comfortable, like this wasn't a big deal at all. I slid under the covers as far from him as physically possible without falling off the mattress. "You're practically hanging over the edge," he said. "I'm fine here. You're going to fall in your sleep." That would be an upgrade from this situation. At some point in the night, I woke up because the room was freezing. I groaned, trying to steal more of the blanket, only to realize Ethan had half of it tangled around him. "Give me." I yanked, and in my sleep-drunk state, I ended up pulling myself right against him. "Jack," he murmured, voice low and rough from sleep. "Cold," I muttered. He shifted, and suddenly his arm was around my waist, pulling me closer. Warmth seeped in instantly, and I hated how good it felt. When I woke up, my face was buried in his chest. His hand was still at my waist. And the worst part? I didn't move. Not right away. He stirred, opening his eyes slowly. "Morning. Don't make this weird," I said immediately. "I'm not making it weird. You're the one still hugging me." I jerked back. "I was asleep. It doesn't count." "Sure," he said, but his grin told me he wasn't buying it. Later that afternoon, we came back from a round of wedding errands. I was tired, grumpy, and more than a little buzzed from the champagne tasting. "You're quiet," Ethan said, leaning on the door once we got inside. "Just tired." He stepped closer, and I felt my pulse jump. "You sure it's not something else?" "I'm sure." But I wasn't. Not when he was that close. Not when I could see the way his eyes kept flicking to my mouth. Before I could overthink it, he leaned in and kissed me. Soft at first, like he was giving me a chance to pull away. I didn't. It wasn't some movie scene kiss. It was real warm, slow, and frustratingly addictive. When he pulled back, I just stared at him. I started, but my brain short-circuited. "Unexpected?" he asked. "Yeah, that." That night, I didn't cling to the edge of the bed. We ended up back in the same position as before, his arm around me, my head against his chest. I told myself it was just for warmth, just for comfort. But as I drifted off, I realized I wasn't cold anymore. And I wasn't exactly uncomfortable either, which obviously was a problem. Chapter 11. The morning after isn't supposed to feel like this. If I thought waking up next to Ethan the first time was bad, waking up next to him after kissing him was worse. Not worse because it was awkward. Worse because it wasn't awkward at all. Sunlight was pouring in through the curtains, spilling across the bed in that golden, romantic way you see in coffee commercials. My head was on Ethan's chest again, his arms still snug around me. And the thing is, I didn't move right away. I just lay there, listening to his heartbeat, feeling the rise and fall of his breathing. Bad idea, because his breathing changed. "You awake?" he murmured, his voice still rough from sleep. "No," I mumbled automatically. "Then you won't mind if I—" He tightened his arm around me, pulling me closer until I was basically sprawled across him. "Ethan, Jack, this is—" I started, but he cut me off by pressing a quick kiss to my hair. "Completely inappropriate," I finished weakly. "Aha," he said, clearly not sorry. After I finally pried myself away from him and took the world's fastest shower, I came out to find Ethan already dressed, leaning casually against the little desk, sipping coffee like he owned the place. "I ordered breakfast," he said. "You didn't ask me what I wanted." "I know what you like." I blinked. "You know what I like?" He smirked. "Black coffee, scrambled eggs, toast with way too much jam, and fruit you'll ignore until I eat it." Okay, he wasn't wrong. But still, congratulations on your creepy observational skills. It's called paying attention, Jack. We sat on the bed with the breakfast trays between us. I was trying very hard to focus on my toast and not the way Ethan's knee kept brushing mine. At one point, I reached for the butter knife at the same time he did. Our fingers brushed, and instead of moving away, he let his hand linger. I gave him a look. "You planning to hold my hand over a butter knife? Romance comes in many forms." I snorted. "You're ridiculous." He just smiled like that was a compliment. After breakfast, I stood by the window, pretending to check my phone. Ethan came up behind me, close enough that I could feel his breath on my neck. "You're thinking too loud," he said softly. "I don't think that's a real thing." "It is with you." I turned to glare at him, but he didn't move back. And just like that, there it was again, that shift in the air. Before I could make some sarcastic remark to break it, he leaned in and kissed me. This one was different from last night's. Less tentative. More sure. I should have stopped it. Instead, I kissed him back, my hands finding his shoulders without my permission. When we finally pulled apart, I muttered, "We said this wasn't a thing." "You said that, I never agreed," he corrected. We had errands to run for the wedding that afternoon, picking up flowers, dropping off decorations at the venue. At some point, while loading boxes into the car, I tripped over a cord. Ethan caught me instantly, arms around my waist. "Careful," he murmured. "I'm fine," I said, even though I didn't pull away right away. "You keep saying that like it's going to make me believe you." I rolled my eyes, but for a moment, standing there in his arms, the whole world felt steady, safe, which was ridiculous. He was my accidental husband, not my anchor. That night, when we got back to the room, I thought about making a blanket wall between us. But when Ethan stretched out and patted the space next to him, I didn't bother. "You're making this confusing," I told him as I slid into bed. "I think I'm making it pretty simple, you just don't want to admit you like me," he said. I scoffed, turning onto my side so my back was to him. "Good night, Ethan." A few minutes later, his arms slid around my waist again, pulling me back against him. "Good night, Jack," he murmured into my hair, and I lay there in the dark, pretending I wasn't smiling. Chapter 12. How to accidentally hijack a wedding rehearsal. Rehearsals are supposed to be boring. You stand where someone tells you, nod when they point at you, and pretend to care about seating charts. Unfortunately, when you're fake married to Ethan Lawson, nothing is boring. We got to the venue just in time for my sister Lily to yell across the hall, "Jack! Ethan! Over here. I waved. Hi, Lily. Nice to see you're already bossing people around. She rolled her eyes. I'm directing. There's a difference. Ethan smirked. Pretty sure that's just bossing with better PR. Lily ignored him and pointed to the front of the aisle. Jack, you're standing next to Ethan during the ceremony. I frowned. Next to? You're both groomsmen, she said like it was obvious. Ethan leaned down to whisper. Guess you can't get rid of me for the next 2 hours. Tragic, I whispered back. We were supposed to walk in sync down the aisle during the practice run, which sounds easy, unless your aisle partner is a smug overachiever. Left foot first, Ethan murmured. I know how to walk, thanks. I shot back. You sure? You're out of rhythm. Maybe you're out of rhythm. He grinned. I'm never out of rhythm. By the time we reached the altar, people in the pews were laughing. While the officiant explained the bride and groom's cues, Ethan leaned closer. Think we should renew our vows while we're up here? I choked on a laugh. We never had vows, remember? Just drunken slurring and a bad Elvis impersonator. He shrugged. Could be fun. You promised to put up with my coffee habits. I promised to pretend your socks match. I elbowed him, but I was smiling. And apparently so was half the wedding party, because they were watching us instead of the actual bride and groom. At one point, the officiant asked us to do a mock presentation of the rings. Since we were standing closest to each other, Ethan pulled a coin from his pocket and held it out like a ring. Jack, will you take this highly valuable nickel as a symbol of my undying annoyance? I snorted. Only if you promise to keep talking just enough to drive me insane, but not enough to make me leave. The room erupted. Even my sister was laughing. Boys, it's not your wedding, she said, shaking her head. After the rehearsal, everyone moved into the reception hall for a quick run-through of the first dance. The DJ put on music so the couple could practice, but for some reason, probably fate or cosmic cruelty, Ethan turned to me. Come on, he said, holding out his hand. I stared at it. What are you doing? Practicing. I'm not the groom. He smirked. Good thing I'm not picky. Before I could stop him, he pulled me onto the dance floor. At first, I was stiff, making a show of looking bored. But then his hand slid to the small of my back, and suddenly my pulse was doing cartwheels. Relax, he murmured. I am relaxed. Sure you are, he said, smiling that infuriatingly calm smile. Somewhere between the swaying and the occasional brush of our knees, I realized we'd fallen into an actual rhythm. His hand was warm, steady, and maybe just a little too comfortable on my back. When the song ended, I expected him to step away. Instead, he stayed close, looking down at me with that unreadable expression. What? I asked. Nothing, he said softly. Just, you dance better than you walk. I rolled my eyes, but my cheeks were warm. Shut up. He didn't shut up. He leaned in and kissed me, right there in the middle of the empty dance floor. It wasn't long, but it was enough to make my brain fizzle. Enough to make me forget there were other people in the room. When we finally pulled apart, I muttered, This is getting dangerously close to you thinking we actually work. He grinned. I already think that. And the worst part? I didn't have a good comeback. Chapter 13. The Morning of Trouble. I woke up to the smell of coffee. Not hotel coffee either, the kind that tastes like it was filtered through someone's gym socks. No, this was real coffee. Rich, dark, and way too good for a morning where I was supposed to pretend I didn't like the guy who made it. I sat up, rubbing my eyes, and there he was, Ethan Lawson, standing at the little kitchenette in our hotel room, wearing a white t-shirt that clung in all the wrong, or maybe all the right places. You're making coffee? I croaked. Good morning to you too. And yes, I'm making coffee. You've got a big day ahead. Weddings are exhausting, especially when your job is to look good and keep me entertained, he said without turning around. I yawned. I didn't sign up to be your personal jester. You didn't sign up for marriage either, he shot back. Touché. By the time I shuffled over to the table, he'd already plated scrambled eggs, toast, and some fruit that was way too colorful to be from this town. I sat down cautiously. What's the catch? No catch, just feeding my husband, he said, sliding the plate toward me. Stop saying that, I muttered, stabbing at the eggs with my fork. Why? It's accurate. It's temporary. It's breakfast, eat it before it gets cold, he countered. We ate mostly in silence, except for the occasional smirk he threw my way. And okay, fine, the food was actually good, which was annoying because it meant I had to admit, at least to myself, that I liked this, that I liked him. After breakfast, I started getting ready for the wedding, which apparently meant Ethan hovering nearby, sipping his second cup of coffee and offering completely unnecessary commentary. Your tie's crooked, he said. It's fine. It's a crime against symmetry, he insisted, stepping forward. Before I could protest, he was fixing it himself. Ethan, I started, but then his fingers brushed my collarbone, and suddenly my throat was dry. He glanced up at me, eyes focused, mouth just slightly curved. There. Perfect. Thanks, I said, trying to sound casual. Spoiler alert, I failed. As we were about to head out, I grabbed my jacket and muttered something about being late. That's when Ethan stepped closer, looping an arm around my waist. What are you doing? I asked, heart thudding. Good luck hug, he said, like it was the most normal thing in the world. Should have been quick. Should have been meaningless. But his hand lingered on my back, warm and steady, and I didn't pull away. You're acting like this is our wedding, I said. He smirked against my ear. Maybe I'm just practicing. On our way out the door, I tripped over my own shoelace. Don't judge me. And Ethan caught me before I could hit the floor. I was half laughing, half mortified. You seriously have a hero complex. He didn't let go. Or maybe I just like holding you. I rolled my eyes. You're insufferable. And yet, you haven't pushed me away once today, he said. We made it down to the hotel lobby before anyone else from the wedding party showed up. It was quiet, just the two of us in a corner by the elevators. I looked at him. He looked at me. And without warning, he leaned in and kissed me. Slow, warm, and completely unhurried. By the time we pulled apart, my brain was a melted mess. This should be the third or fourth time we kissed. What are you even doing? I muttered. Well, I just felt like that. You look tasty in this suit, he said with a grin. And just like that, we stepped out into the chaos of the wedding day, him looking smug, me pretending not to smile. But if anyone had asked right then whether I was still planning to get that annulment, I'm not sure I could have answered. Chapter 14. How to steal a wedding you're not even in. If there's one thing you should know about weddings, it's that no matter how much the bride says, it's going to be a simple day, she's lying. By the time Ethan and I got to the venue, it was already chaos. Bridesmaids were running around with curling irons like they were wielding weapons. Groomsmen were trying to figure out how cufflinks worked. Someone had lost the flower girl's shoes, and the best man looked like he'd aged 10 years in 20 minutes. And me? I was just trying not to trip over my own feet in front of Ethan. Again, Lily spotted us first. Jack, Ethan, over here. We walked over, and Ethan, because he's Ethan, leaned down to mutter, You ready to play the perfect groomsman/fake husband? Pretty sure I'm already nailing the second part, I whispered back. Lily handed us both boutonnieres and narrowed her eyes at our whispering. Whatever you're plotting, don't. This is my wedding day. Of course, Ethan said sweetly, which was the biggest red flag of all. We somehow survived the photographer's pre-ceremony pictures, even though Ethan decided to make faces at me every time I tried to look serious. You're impossible, I hissed when we stepped out of frame. You're smiling, he said. When it came time for the procession, Ethan and I were paired again, which meant the walk was less graceful and more banter while moving forward at an acceptable speed. Don't trip, he murmured. Don't boss me, I shot back. Bossing you is half the fun. We made it to the front without incident, but I swear I felt his hand brush mine just before we parted. Accidentally, probably. I wish I could say I paid full attention to my sister exchanging vows, but I didn't. Mostly because I could feel Ethan standing beside me. That stupid calm presence, warm and steady, like he was anchored there just for me. At one point, I glanced at him. He was already looking at me. What? I mouthed. He just smiled and shook his head. After the ceremony, the reception began, which was fine, until the DJ decided to make everyone get up and practice their dancing for later. I should have seen it coming. The moment the music started, Ethan was in front of me, hand outstretched. "Oh no," I said. "Oh yes," he countered. And because I'm apparently weak, I took his hand. We didn't just dance. We danced. Full swaying, small smiles, and the occasional lean-in that made my chest feel uncomfortably tight. "Stop looking at me like that," I muttered. "Like what?" Like you're enjoying this." "I am enjoying this," which was not the answer my brain needed. Later, after the cake cutting, I was standing off to the side watching the chaos when Ethan came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. "Ethan, relax, you look good tonight," he murmured. That's all it took. I turned in his arms, and before I could talk myself out of it, I kissed him. It wasn't planned. It wasn't cautious. It was a real, I actually want this kiss. When we finally pulled apart, my heart was racing. "You're going to ruin me," I said quietly. He smiled, brushing his thumb over my cheek. "Good." By the time we left the reception, it was late. We walked out hand in hand, not for show this time, but because it felt right. As we got into the car, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just fake anymore. Chapter 15. The part where I stopped pretending. We got back to the hotel sometime after midnight, both of us still in our wedding clothes. Ethan tossed his jacket onto a chair like he owned the place and loosened his tie with one hand. I meanwhile was trying to get my cufflinks off and failing miserably. He noticed. "You're struggling." "I'm fine," I said, tugging at the metal like I could intimidate it into submission. He crossed the room, took my wrist, and with ridiculous ease undid both cuffs in about 5 seconds. "Show off," I muttered. "You're welcome," he said, his voice low, and then he didn't step back. We stood there for a beat too long, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating off him. "You danced well tonight," he said almost casually. I snorted. "You mean I didn't step on your feet?" "That too," he said, smiling. I could have stepped away. I should have. Instead, I let him slide his hands to my waist, and my body leaned into his without asking my brain for permission. You know, for two people who are supposed to be getting an annulment, we've gotten really good at this whole married thing. Ethan said, tilting his head. "That's because you're bossy and I'm adaptable," I said. "Adaptable, huh?" "Yes, I adapt. To situations. Like this." "Which is a bad idea," I said. He smiled faintly. "And yet you're not moving." "Shut up," I muttered. He leaned in, close enough that I could smell his cologne. "You want me to stop?" I didn't answer, which I guess was answer enough because then his mouth was on mine. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't careful either. It was that perfect middle ground where every second felt like it could last forever, but also like it wasn't nearly enough. My hands ended up on his shoulders, gripping just enough to keep me grounded. He slid to my back, holding me there like he'd never let go. When we broke apart, we were both breathing harder than we should have been. "This isn't fake anymore, is it?" he asked quietly. I swallowed. "You're the one who said it would be temporary." I did, and I was wrong. I stared at him because honestly, what else do you do when the guy you accidentally married in Vegas tells you he doesn't want out? "You're saying," I started. "I'm saying I like you, Jack. I like the way you complain about my cooking and then eat everything. I like how you always pretend you're not having fun until you are. I like us," he said, his voice steady. I should have made a joke, deflected, something. But instead, I stepped forward, wrapped my arms around him, and just stayed there. We didn't rush it, didn't talk, just stood there holding on, like the whole world could wait a few minutes. Eventually, I mumbled into his shoulder, "If we keep this up, we're never getting that annulment." "Good," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. We didn't exactly sleep right away. There was more kissing, more holding, that quiet, Comfortable laughter that happens when you're both tired and happy and a little overwhelmed. By the time we finally collapsed into bed, I was pressed against him, my head tucked under his chin. And for the first time since that drunken night in Vegas, I didn't think about what would happen after. I just thought about him,